Welcome back to DukascopyTV. Now, with rules and regulations around every corner, it can make ensuring your business ticks all of the necessary boxes exceptionally difficult. Here to discuss a new all-encompassing method towards compliance is Jacques Bøch. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Okay, now what is the current approach towards compliance, and what, in your consideration, would be the main pitfalls likely to affect companies who are using it?
The approach today towards compliance is, let's say, very silo-based, meaning that in fact you have an increasing level of rules and regulations for each different part of the compliance requirements, such as anti-bribery and corruption, tax, Sarbanes-Oxley, and so on. And so what you can see is that every one of these compliance requirements is treated kind of vertically by a silo, and they are developing not only within the companies but also as professions. They are developing separate frameworks or approaches. And the pitfalls of that are, let's say, that there is a risk that companies miss out on an opportunity to unify things and thus generate efficiencies. There is, they may also be lacking a big picture view, because today all these streams come together at a very high level, such as the CEO or the board. Whereas if you if you could bring them together at the lower level, at the middle management level, then in fact you could have more of an ingrained knowledge lower down in the organization. And finally, what they're also missing out on is possibly the use of very useful pre-existing compliance frameworks, such as COSO 2, which I favor.
Now, the notion of compliance itself isn't exactly novel, but do you think it's becoming increasingly important in today's society for businesses?
Oh yes. Mm-hmm. In fact, compliance, as you say, is not new at all. Even apes, if you do experiments, will punish non-compliance. There have been experiments in the 60s about that. Now, what is, let's say, an evolving situation since mankind started is that from a tribal base, within the last 2,000 or 6,000 years, we've moved towards societies which are much larger, where people maybe don't know each other any longer. And more recently, we've introduced large companies, shareholder companies, where in French they're called Société Anonyme, which points us towards the fact that in fact there is some anonymity between everyone involved. And so because of that, we've moved from unwritten rules, which everyone understood, just a few, towards many written rules, which are in fact expanding. And recently there has been even more of a call for financial regulation, consumer regulation, and so on, all because people want more fairness in their democracies, and they also want to make sure that nothing, let's say, that hazards are basically eliminated. So that's how it's been evolving. Another trend, a more recent trend, is that legislators will in fact say that if you uphold a solid control network within your company, a compliance network, then even if something untoward happens, in fact, the company will be protected because it will have made reasonable efforts to prevent whatever happened.
So, taking that into consideration, could you give the viewers and myself a brief sort of overview of what this single stream compliance actually is?
Sure. In fact, single stream compliance is the merger of several different streams of compliance, meaning compliance in the sense that you have reports and controls and also audits, which could be bespoke for each stream and which can be at least partly merged. And likewise, you have all these streams within financial reporting or, let's say, sectoral reportings, or you might have requirements within anti-bribery and corruption and so on. And all these streams have some potential for being unified into a single one.
What exactly do companies stand to gain from adopting single stream compliance, and how would they go towards adopting it in their own companies?
What they have to gain is, as I said earlier, they will be more efficient. So either they can just take the gains, or they can use those gains for letting compliance people basically spend time on more higher value added work. Also, they will probably have a more big picture approach towards everything. They'll have more knowledge at a lower level and more knowledge of the full picture, which is very useful in avoiding, let's say, focusing on risks which in reality are maybe smaller than they appeared. They will also be able to leverage one single framework instead of using several.
And for ourselves to tick all the boxes, what are the limitations of this method and how might companies overcome them, do you think?
Yeah, there are, first of all, you need to take care of correct implementation, meaning you have to select, in my opinion, one single framework, which I would recommend to be COSO 2, which is very useful. You have to, of course, implement some kind of project governance, maybe by naming one function as being the leader of the implementation effort. On the other hand, you have to let's say you have to educate people towards being open enough to accept, and that's not really natural for compliance people always, to accept that maybe somewhere else someone has already built something which is very useful. And let's say a limitation which maybe cannot be overcome at all, and which then you just leave alone, is that certain sectoral compliance requirements, such as specific to banking or pharmacy, pharmaceutical companies or air transport, you just have to accept that they are so specific that you probably cannot merge much of it into a single compliance stream.
Jacques, it's been great chatting to you. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Now, sadly, that's all we have time for at the moment, but click back to DukascopyTV for market news and exclusive interviews like this one. But for now, goodbye.